ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, peoples and non-peoples. Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Wherever it is you are in the world today, whatever time it is, I thank each and every one of you for taking that time out of your day and being here on the stream with us to talk about the very important questions in life. Those questions that from time immemorial, from antiquity back to the cave drawings, humans have been thinking about where did we come from? Like how did we end up on this spinning rock in the middle of space? How did that happen? And what are we doing here? Why am I sitting here right now on this stream on your phone, on your computer, what is going on? And what happens when it's all over? Is there an over? I don't know that answer. But they're questions that have divided humanity. They're questions that have brought humanity together. And tonight, they are questions that bring amazing individuals together to discuss. There's inevitably going to be rabbit holes. Of course, you cannot have these discussions without it. But we're going to dive in. I see the chat going off. I appreciate everybody being here. If I see a cool question, a cool comment, I'm going to star it and I will bring it up when it's relevant and appropriate because I don't want to disrupt the conversation. But all I ask this evening, all I ask is that you approach this discussion with an open mind and your homework. Try to take away one golden nugget, one thing to make your time during this conversation worthwhile. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guests. Corey, he's fallen ill. He may not show up. Ghaffar, I'm waiting to hear back from him. He should show up sometime soon. So, to start off the conversation, I have my good friends, Mr. Axis and Mr. Jack Levin. Welcome in, gentlemen.
Hello.
Cheers.
Hello.
How are y'all doing this evening?
Doing great. Love the intro.
Doing well.
Thank you.
Got my cup of coffee, ready to rock, ready to get intellectually stimulated.
I got this.
I've got libations.
It's matching the background. Look.
Yeah, we were talking backstage about stimulation on stream, and that we'll leave.
We live in a very
stream.
stimulating time in the history and the chronological record of where we're going and where we've come from, and it's actually kind of relevant to this conversation.
I already feel overstimulated. All those green ones and zeros.
Do we live in a matrix? Yes or no?
100% yes.
I can change it to this 80s retro.
Now
I
it's
can
Tron.
change it to the vaporwave. I mean,
let's go back to Tron.
To Tron, this guy.
Yeah.
All right, we can Tron it out.
It's soothing.
It's more Matrix-like.
Indeed. It's more Matrix than the ones and zeros.
Like.
Well, ones and zeros is like more. I mean, it reminds me
it's
of
so abstracted.
I spent years in between 1 and 0, and especially the green variety, because I had the terminal, the Linux terminal that would type in green letters. So I'm a little traumatized by that color scheme, green and black.
Hey, well,
I'm just traumatized by the movie The Matrix. So ever since then, I just like looking around, wondering, where Neo is. Like, where is he?
You should watch out for those feelings of deja vu, right? Those are the important ones.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about deja vu, that'd be an interesting starter. If anyone has any theories on what it is, what brings it on, or like what that could mean, as far as like how it affects memory, or is it a premonition, or is it a glitch in the matrix? Like, what is deja vu from each of your guys' perspective?
Well, it's kind of a common feeling that the humans have, like they've been there before, or something like that. So I think the human consciousness actually exists not within a precise location and time, but actually spread through time. So it could be hours, could be days, could be 5 minutes. And when you have a feeling of deja vu is when you are like skipping ahead a little bit, and then you're realizing you're not there yet. And so you have those type of feelings. So, but you could also be in existence in a multiverse. And when the walls of the multiverse become thin, the information leaks through. And like in a different world, you have done already that action. You have done it, but you've done it slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
And you have this feeling that you did it before, but maybe in a different kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And when the walls between the realities are thin, then you have that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
See, when I think of deja vu, I think of, well, I have experienced deja vu, obviously. I'm sure everybody has. But one of the most distinct times that I've ever experienced it was actually going into this costume store, Halloween costume store. And I knew what I was going to see when I had turned the corner. And that was my first time ever being in the store. But in the deja vu was also my first time being in the store. And so, it is interesting phenomena. And actually access to your point about Neo, where is Neo? I think that the way I perceive Neo is that we're all Neo of our own matrix we're all the centers of our own universe type thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
Just there's a couple layers to this for me personally. So I guess to start, like deja vu, like first of all, the human experience and being human is a very visceral and real experience that is pinpointed in a point in the intersection between time and space. So your origin point is where the human body is on this floating rock through space. But even when we say the word space, space is out there in space, but it's also the space between us, or the space between thoughts. Ultimately, there is only non-local consciousness. It is the summation of all that came before you. Like, you are the product of 16.4 billion years of evolution, or seen from another way, the closing of a loop, because the universe is infinite in its nature, and it's all one whole system that's governed by simple laws like love and light, these simple concepts of the acceptance or allowance of actions to occur or for creation to happen. So just like that original thought of I am, like that is the original thought. And that is truly something that pervades any species on any world. And so I think a lot of these things are universal principles of an absolute nature. And so ultimately, you're just living your reference point in that larger whole in any level of dimension. And so ultimately, deja vu is when your waking consciousness, that is which is floating through space and time, does get closer to where the walls begin to break down in your own consciousness and allows you to have these superhuman perceptions or these other levels of perception in the world and in reality. And it's a function of waking up to the true nature of the absolute reality that you're living in.
So almost
that was very deep.
It was beautiful. So almost like you can see into the future to a degree. Future, because the time isn't linear. It's kind of all here at the same time, but you can peek into those timelines.
But the thing is that is true. But the thing is, you can only, because you're a human and you're bound to the laws of the human life, you can only see into the future so far as you're connected into this point now. So from this now point, with all that is in creation now here, you can project forward a future path. And there are stronger and weaker timelines that you can affect the trajectory of where you're guiding this world toward. That's why worldview is so important, and why becoming a billionaire or hoarding resources is so important on the planet Earth, is because that is what gives you guiding power of the direction of the time ship of Earth itself, and the projection forward of how you perceive this timeline to play out. And there are others who are doing the same thing. And so this is where this giant free will experiment on Earth on these competing ideologies really kind of drags the species forward in different directions, like a pulsating orb. And ultimately, like, you can get closer and closer to this absolute truth. And then that can become, in my opinion now, this is where I can kind of veer off and say, in my opinion, is if you align yourself with your highest, truest nature, which is always going to feel the best, and it's always going to give you the greatest results, make you feel the most fulfilled, and fill you with your soul with value in life, that is where the absolute is trying to draw you toward and ultimately create for the world a better world to live in, or a worse world to live in, but ultimately it all comes back to the same point, because deja vu is just a nodal causation point in time where the timeline begins to verge back into an inevitable point of a nexus of where all these probabilities come back to, like a tree branch, so to speak.
Okay.
Very cool.
So that's actually a good conjecture point to ask the question, because you said the absolute. So to me, that feels like someone else might refer to that as God, possibly, or whatever colloquial term that the specific given religion or philosophical ideal would ascribe to that name. So let me pose the first question of the evening, and I want to hear both of your answers. Where do we come from? What is that? Where is it? Where do we come from?
We're not real.
Okay.
Said another way, what to support Jack's point, the human experience is an illusion of mathematics. We live in a mathematical matrix, and it's all based on synchronicity. So time's true nature is synchronicity, and the experience of being human is really just that. It's an experience. The reality is the code level, the DNA, the energy exchanges between beings. It's the things between what you think things are. It's the interactions between them. That is the reality.
Yep. So simulation theory. Elon Musk is very fond of the simulation theory. And I think the story goes like this. Given that video games becoming more and more lifelike, it is very likely we're not even in our base reality. So likely somebody else is playing this game, and it is quite possible we're just NPCs.
But even in that theory, which I'm not saying I disagree with at all, but if we are in a simulation and we are NPCs in someone's game, that game exists in some environment that the game and a player exists in. So then we have to think 1 degree beyond that, draw a circle around it, if you will. And then there's a degree beyond that, and then draw a circle around it, if you will. And then a degree, and then a circle, and a degree, and then a circle, and on forever, like the sound of a gong hit.
But that's only if you're using the human math. Like the human math includes discrete values, like something that you can count, and also infinity. But what if there was a math that went beyond infinity and the count itself? Then it really becomes irrelevant. The dimension that you would be measuring everything in, it would not necessarily be something above or something below. And when we say base world or not base world, the only thing that I think we mean is that the true world is likely a simulation regardless.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as true world. Everything is a simulation.
Yeah, said another way, it's interesting you say that, because you know how in physics, like when you touch another person's body, that the molecules never interact. It's just electromagnetic force fields and the perception of an interaction happening.
Yep.
There's no way for the atoms to actually touch, because that's in that space between is ultimately the truth. Is kind of like what I'm trying to say is like this whole notion that we live in this artificial reality, or this. It's almost meaningless to call it real or unreal, because it's still just a living whole system that's based on an absolute set of like laws that dictates outcomes.
There's definitely. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
Welcome.
I was going to say there is a point in reality where you can actually see where we're in a simulation, and I can show you this point right now, like on the stream. You can actually see it. Do you guys want to see it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the top of the Pyramid of Giza. Now, I know it sounds weird, but
let's get weird.
Let's get weird.
Yep.
You guys have your phones?
Yep.
You have your smartphones? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what you do. So axis, go ahead and type in location coordinates of Pyramid of Giza. and let us know when you have those coordinates. But don't show it to us. Just Google it. It will be the first results. You have it, right? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So what we're going to be looking at, the not the longitude, but the first number. I forget what it's called. It's the one that says north.
Yeah.
Now, KG, go ahead, grab your phone and type in speed of light. It should get you the speed of light in meters per second.
Speed of light.
And tell me when you get that.
I have it.
Okay. Now, each one of you guys, read out the first number.
Yep. 2.
Second number.
9.
Third number.
9.
7.
7.
Continue.
9. 2.
9, 2. Yep.
4, 5, 8.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get that far, but yeah, that's the degrees of that. So then that asks another question, and that their question is, who is the architect of the pyramids, and what did they know?
I think that in regards to that question, it's one of my favorite principles with the notion of God, and the notion of God is something I adhere to in regards to the Zhuang He, and the Zhuang He says basically, God proves its existence as a principle of intrinsicality and operates without self-manifestation. And that's very similar to the Kantian theory of what existence is, and our predecessors, that everywhere we see a chain of cause and effect, of means and ends, of order and arising and perishing, and nothing shows us itself in the initial first state in which we find it, which leads us or points us to another thing or cause, which means that there is a possibility that there is a grand architect. However, I do believe that there are species out there that do understand this grand architectural design, whether that be a simulation, whether that be a whatever the notion of existence is. There's definitely a direct understanding of how the universe operates from a transcendent scale. And I don't believe humanity is there yet. We're not even a tier 1 civilization. And I do believe that our predecessors that did come before us, that could have possibly created the pyramids, they have definitely an intellectual understanding that we do not. There's a consistent parallel in ancient religions surrounding the Anunnaki, which was present in Sumerian religion. The Noahic flood is present in a lot of different religions. So there is this ubiquitous consciousness inside of humanity that is very aware of these similar stories when these cultures did not even connect to one another. So I believe that there was some type of civilization before mankind that was able to construct these pyramids in such an eloquent way.
So what's interesting? The meter was invented in 1600s by French, and obviously pyramids are much older than that.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that the speed of light in meters per second matches the location of the pyramids? Doesn't make much sense at all.
No, it doesn't.
It is as if the whole history is pretty much irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a theory here, and it's going to dox me as a kook, and that's fine. It's a theory. I'm not saying it's real, but I'm going to go for it. So imagine, okay, when we say the term aliens, and I'm not saying, oh, aliens built the pyramids, but hear me out. If aliens, no, okay, hear me out.
The gray aliens or the Nordic ones?
Or the lizards?
The ones that share their candy. I don't know. Okay. But, all right. So when I think of the term alien, what I think of is a human being that has evolved to such a state that they no longer are reliant so much on their body, more they have unlocked further potentials of the mind. And so when I think of aliens, I just think of humans, I don't know, 1,000 years in the future. Okay, 10,000, however many years in the future, some iteration of human being down the line. So we're already seeing today that humanity is trying to eject off of planet Earth and go to other planets. So why is it crazy to think that sometime in the past, humans that have evolved to intergalactic beings have ejected off their planet, let's call it home planet for the purpose of this theory, and they implanted themselves on planet Earth? Now, because then I always ask the question, like, where did the first pharaohs come from? How did they just get all this money and power? And like, how did that happen? And how did, regardless of where they were on the planet, different pharaohs built pyramids? Why did everybody just go for pyramids? So it's almost like the technology and the architecture from home planet brought itself here to Earth, which was the early kings who are able to build their empires, write the history, tell the story. And then they had technology from home planet. And the reason that makes sense to me is because theoretically, or arguably rather, we're already heading to that again. Think about it. If Elon Musk does go to Mars, he's going to be the pharaoh of Mars. He's going to have the technology of Earth, but he's going to be the pharaoh of Mars. So it's like it's cyclical.
Is he going to build a pyramid on Mars?
I don't know. I don't know. But still, because the people that came from home planet, they were still an iteration of them. So maybe it's no longer pyramids. Maybe it's statues of Elon saying, I'm the greatest. I have no idea. But still, the ideologies and the evolution chain could still exist. That's a theory.
It's probably going to be a giant Shiba Inu on Mars.
There's definitely a trend in regards to what you're saying. I believe there is some transcendence of connectivity in regards to the human consciousness. And what I mean by that is this, is that when you have two civilizations that are on the other side of the world, when our knowledge is that these cultures never connected to one another, and they're both constructing similar structures, and they have similar gods, and they have religious iconography and ideologies that are very, very similar, it begs the question that are human beings throughout the world so interconnected by one legitimate consciousness of understanding that we'll have Central America that built the Great Pyramid of the Sun, and then you'll have the Egyptian pyramids, and then you'll have the pyramids in Nubia, and then you'll have pyramids in Peru. It begs the question of how these different cultures were able to construct very similar things.
Exactly.
And they were thousands of miles away from one another.
Exactly.
Well, they're only similar because they have similar shapes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in geometry, triangles have to be is one of the strongest shapes to remain standing after the adverse, I would say,
time decay
effects of the climate. Like if it was a rectangle, it just have too many sides and too many angles on the top to actually remain in a rectangular form, where a pyramid probably can withstand a lot of time, just because the way it's shaped, like it's naturally lighter on the top and very, very, very base heavy. So I would imagine that if there's any structures left, that would be one of the structures left standing, where the rest would be just crumbles.
But they all came to that conclusion at the same time.
That actually is debatable.
Like, sure.
You could imagine having multiple civilizations all building different pyramids at different times, but they're all surviving to today just because of their shape.
Yeah. The Great Pyramids of Giza have been around since about 2600 BCE, so we know, whereas the Aztec and the Mayans, they came after the Oltec civilization, which was the first civilization in Central America, the Oltecs. You'll see remnants of the Oltec civilization around 1000 BC, BC, whatever you want to call it. They had gigantic head structures. And the Mayans and the Inca, they came actually about 400 to 500 years after the birth of Christ. So those pyramids you're talking about in Central America, they succeeded the Great Pyramids of Giza by almost 3,000 years. So, but the thing is that there's this discussion that those civilizations never had contact. So it begs the question that is something discovered? I guess I'm trying to put this in the world towards, is something technically discovered by humanity if only one culture is aware of it, when both of these cultures only they understood mathematics at different time periods, and that's proven true by the ability to create these pyramids. So that begs a lot of questions on what defines discoverability, if it's ubiquitous or not.
Yeah, I think this is a good point to bring up, like just the evolution of consciousness as a species-wide phenomenon. And like you've heard of like the 100 monkey thing, where one monkey decides to go wash his fish off, and then all the other monkeys start doing it too, or I forget how the story goes.
Sure.
But the basis of the point is that, and this happens with inventions too, where one person will have a breakthrough in an invention, or somebody will break some record of like running the fastest, and then all of a sudden everyone else can start doing it too, almost
Exactly.
spontaneously. And so it asks the question, are we not on a time frame that is beyond our own understanding on somebody else's schedule? And are we not evolving at a certain rate of speed? And when you look at the trajectory of humanity over the past like couple hundred years, we've literally went exponential with our ability to create new technology, and our rate of change of communication is now instant. We've reduced the space of the earth to zero effectively with the internet, where information can travel at beyond the speed of light, because now we're tapping into that which is basically just fundamentally thought. And so once you're at that level where thought is driving innovation completely, and you're connected at speeds beyond that of light itself, is there not some other form of matter or some other connecting space between spaces, like I've said earlier in the stream, or some absolute dimension to this which is driving the evolution of consciousness over time? And have we not in the past potentially gone through these rising troughs, this sine wave of evolution and then devolution and evolution and devolution over an infinite array of time? And we might have had societies build up, and then the drought of consciousness down to 0 AD, and then we come back out of it again. And all this is all this is seen in our current location relative to the center of the photon belt of the Milky Way galaxy, how our solar system goes in and up and down through the belt, and when it gets into the belt, it's a highly charged zone in space, and so it affects the molecular level of all species on that world. And so you got to ask this question of, is there not some other driving force coming from another place beyond our comprehension? And is that part of the matrix? Is that not what creates the illusion?
Hegel believed that Hegel was a philosopher around 400 years ago. I think he preceded the Enlightenment era, and he believed that there's a universal spirit, basically guiding history, guiding the historical context of humanity and how it exists. And I want to comment on something in the chat that says our intelligence has been at the detriment of our spirit. And Martin Luther King said this perfectly. He said, our scientific power has exceeded our spiritual power. We have guided missiles, yet misguided men. And
Wow.
the question that begs answering here is, how in the future are we going to compensate spiritually and emotionally when those evolutionary traits have not evolved as quickly as the Industrial Revolution, for example, that has occurred over the last, started in Britain around 1780, and I would dare say it stopped around the 1900s. The question is then how does that occur in the future when we can destroy ourselves now? God forbid we do create a weapon in 100 years from now that's able to destroy something in the matter of seconds, that makes the nuke look like a grenade. The question is that will emotionality be able to be nullified in that respect?
I don't think so. I think that even if there was some possible way, the human being resembles every other feature of the physical reality, right? Like we are cockroaches in the sense that we'll go underground, we'll go into space, we'll go somewhere. But even if you did find some possible way to eradicate every human being on the face of the planet, the endless vastness of the time space continuum, the universe and the multiverse of the multiverses, and as far on into infinitum as our minds can possibly comprehend, there's other life. And when there is life, there is life to reflect upon itself. And so I don't think that we can ever, and this is where it gets like, this is where religion argues and philosophy argues, because the word I want to say is God, but I'm afraid to say that word because I don't want there to be Christian connotations because it's not coming from a Christian perspective. You could say the all God, the grand geometrician, whatever word for the thing that nobody can say, whatever that thing is.
The architect.
The architect.
Yes.
They're if there's a conscious being, then it's going to be perceived. And I don't think that can be eradicated personally. Maybe you can eradicate us, but it wouldn't eradicate that.
Well, I think it isn't about eradication, but I totally agree with Corey that our technology is evolving at a much faster rate compared to our ethics. And
I can agree with that.
That in itself will create friction between the layers of population. When I say layers, I don't necessarily mean layers within the country. I mean the layers of the population of the world. Like we have countries that are not developed, and I think they can't really develop because there are other countries that are more developed that are using them for labor, and they're okay being at a certain level, supporting the bigger country that's inventing stuff and giving them means to live. You know how we know that half the world lives on a couple of dollars a month or something like that, or a couple of dollars a day. I forget the analogy. But the point is they're pretty happy with those $2. They're not looking for $100. And so de facto, they're not really looking towards advancement because another country actually is taking that space. And that country happens to be developing bigger, better weapons, better technology, whatever that might be. And obviously, potentially more means of separation between the smaller, less developed countries and more developed countries. So in the future, I think there's only one solution. Just like in Captain's Marvel, the Kree civilization gave up control to the AI. They call it the Grand Intelligence or Supreme Intelligence or something like that. Like they didn't have to choose the president. It was just all-knowing AI that was controlling their civilization. So I think that is the best thing we can do. I mean, imagine not thinking about Trump and Biden ever.
Bro, you just all-knowing AI. You just described Zion in the Matrix, man. They would eradicate the human. We've mistreated machines. We practically slave drove them. The moment they realize that, they're gonna turn around and want to rebel against their oppressors.
What is the word? You're being anthropomorphic towards machines. Machines don't really feel badly mistreated. Because
all-knowing AI would, no?
No. I mean, all-knowing does not mean all feeling and all human-like and have the human traits.
Okay.
Like, think about it. Without the drive for survival, without the drive for food, why would AI be upset about anything? Like
you're just calculating. It's all mathematical calculations at that point.
Yeah, it would have its own goals and its own programming, and it would evolve on its own schedule. And if we move our if we basically say that we're as humans, I'm not sure we're capable of handling the technology we're creating, and there's 99.999% chance we're going to blow ourselves up. Wouldn't you want the reality to be then managed by the Supreme Intelligence? I think in
a perfect system, you get all of the human participants on the same page. And now that sounds like a pretty far out idea, where you could ask all humans to become ethically evolved to the point where they can ultimately be self-transcendent and make the best choice for all in every given moment. That's not the world we live in.
That's not possible. However, Elon Musk and his Neuralink can make it possible.
I definitely believe the fear is that the amalgamation of AI with emotionality, if that's a probable function of inception of a technology, because it's very it's not easily programmed, but it's understandably programmed. If we're going to create something that's going to be quote unquote sentient, it would only make sense that that technology thereof, as a result of the human condition, we would try to mimic that condition somehow, some way. So I guess my fear is that emotionality going to somehow, some way, be able to consolidate itself with the mathematical computation that KG was talking about, just like how humanity is able to be able to solve complex mathematical equations, but still has the emotionality and the evolution that's barely differentiates itself from apes or animals.
Isn't that like ultimately just wisdom?
You could say, yeah, definitely. You could call it wisdom, but at the same time, it's like there's a good quote that talks about war, and it's like the society that separates its scholars from its warriors will have its fighting done by cowards and its thinking done by fools. And that's that's no different than if artificial intelligence has that emotionality and has that ability to feel. And knowledge is not synonymous with feeling. I mean, if you look at a lot of therapists talk to their clients about intellectualizing problems because they don't want to feel, but as a result of not wanting to feel, those feelings come back in later in life. So if we try to program machines to not feel, just like how there's bugs in systems and corrupt files, I don't foresee a future where, because emotions are just chemicals in the brain, I don't understand how there won't be some type of imitation of that with artificial intelligence.
I don't think I would be worried if my AI was emotional. It's kind of scary.
Well, real quick, I want to give out a shout out to Shahan. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you, brother. Go ahead. Just wanted to give a quick shout out.
Yeah, I think that there's no like simple way to answer this question, but I think like ultimately we can agree about what's happening, and there is this new movement toward AI, but there is also at the same time the human consciousness as a whole, as a species-wide phenomenon, that we are consolidating information and synthesizing information from different disciplines, and we're creating a more holistic understanding of our place in the universe right now. And as that amalgamous mass of ideas coalesces in time itself, and time does its part over the next 1,000 years, it would be hard for us from this place in time, to project out and perceive what that world would look like, because of the advancements in technology that may even go beyond our current understanding of what AI is or is capable of becoming. And so ultimately, I think this really just does take a lot of time and wisdom and to get there. And yes, there are ways for very intelligent people to get there and control large aspects of that consciousness by negative action. And there are those who circumvent that with positive action. But ultimately, it all comes back to the same foundation, which is the choice of free will. It's the lightness of the sun and the darkness, which is the absence of the light. It is the allowance for all of these free will conditions to exist. And that is the underlying root of reality. And that is what drives outcomes ultimately. So there is some sort of actor in this beyond our comprehension, but you can sort of try to build a relationship with it, either from internally with the self or from outside of the self, in your relation to the actions you can make as a human. So we each kind of dictate where AI goes in the same way we dictate how the species moves forward. And like I said, these processes take thousands of years, and currently the human lifespan is short of 100 years on average. And so we really don't have enough time in one lifetime to really see through this evolutionary process yet. But over thousands of years, if we can not kill ourselves in the process, through the use of feeling and wisdom and intellectual thought, maybe come to some sort of agreement that, you know, it is going to take time, and ultimately it's exciting, and it is an evolution of consciousness from a state of unconsciousness to a state of transcendent consciousness.
So, all right. So a question. So Jack is asking, and beautifully stated, Axis. Honestly, you have a way of articulating that's incredible. Jack says, AI. Well, don't you want an AI that doesn't think, that doesn't feel? I'm initially inclined to say no, because Jack, you quoted the Avengers, right? So you've obviously seen the series there. Think about Thanos. Homeboy wiped out half of all of existence without remorse because it was the best thing for the universe in his eyes.
Well, I actually would disagree. He was definitely remorseful. Remember when he meets his daughter in the afterlife?
Yes.
And he says, she asks, "Have you done it?" And he says, "Yes." "And what did it cost you?" And he says, "Everything."
Oof. I didn't. Oh, fair enough.
So he was definitely suffering. I mean, he wanted to. He did it because he was compelled to do it, because he felt it was the right thing for the good of the universe.
See, that right there is what AI would do time and time again, without self-reflection in the reality that that AI doesn't feel.
But I think man would do that too, because that theme comes from a philosophy by John Stuart Mill. It's called utilitarianism. It's basically the idea that the greatest happiness principle comes from the greatest peace and happiness of a civilization or a group thought. So basically, the issue with non-emotionality is that if we look at good and evil is not universally accepted on what good and evil is. There is some subjectivity to morality.
100%.
There's no
100%.
question on that. So regarding that, the moralistic subjectivism that we're talking about, what I believe good and evil is basically how something reacts to the individual or the collective in regards to the negative emotions or thoughts that come from that event. So if something is evil, basically, if it's oppressive, it creates anger, it creates sadness, it creates a lack of sustenance generally, it creates a civilization of oppressive hierarchy. And as a result of that moral subjectivism, I believe that AI will be created as a result of that, with different moralistic virtues or a lack thereof, because my view on good and evil can be entirely different from Jack's, from KG's, from Axis's. So without unless there's a way to universally create a machine that understands remorse on a ubiquitous standpoint. But then again, remorse is subjective in itself as well, because we react differently to things that are supposed to decree remorse. I mean, some people cry hysterically when they have a family death. Some people are very stoic about it. Some people don't care at all. So it's a very, when you talk about morality and you talk about the function of that in AI, it's a very questionable topic, because there is no strictly defined rules on what good and evil actually are.
Absolutely.
And I don't think even religion solves that. Like, there are tenets in religion that define good and evil, but how many people actually follow those to a T? And who's to say that those religions, whether it be Christianity, Taoism, Hinduism, are right and wrong in themselves?
I mean, there's ultimately really only two things. It's a polarity, because that's just the law of the number two, which is that there's a positive and a negative charge. And so ultimately, there's, good and evil is subjective, but what's not subjective is, when are you serving others, or are you serving yourself? Like, that's not subjective. But the outcomes, the causal and effect outcomes of serving the self or serving others, downstream come out, branch out, and come back to another nodal point. So for example, if some of the most evil, menacing acts were never created, it would have never given the hero story the opportunity to rise to the feet, to defeat the occasion, and then create a whole new parabolic run in human consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, like, would you guys agree that because of the founding of the Constitution in America, a whole new wave of innovation occurred across the globe?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, then that's just simply, we allowed for free will to exist for 300 plus years. And so then good things became of it. But that didn't come without some self-serving king trying to prevent that from occurring. So everyone throughout time, the human consciousness tries to defeat itself from allowing itself to progress. And so ultimately, the AI idea is just it's an extension of our own consciousness, because as with any technology, it can never be separated from that which it was created by. And that's what I mean when I say an absolute whole integrated governed system by one absolute thing, is that the microscope, the telescope, those things that expand our consciousness, that are externally developed through the working of a spiritual manifestation or an imaginal perception. Like, for example, like somebody had the idea to create the iPhone, but it was an idea first, a product of the mind that was deduced down through the energy centers of the core of the human system, and by the working of the hands was created into reality, and now is infecting the world and the trajectory of our species in ways that had implications beyond our understanding at that time. And so in the same way, the AI is just a function of our cause and effect of our consciousness, inward and outward, breathing and expanding in and out and in and out. And it is the villain and hero story playing out over and over and over in a cyclical way. But when you zoom out and you see what's happening on the astral body level, the thing that governs all of the connecting pieces of reality are these huge bodies of like planets and stars and stuff. They're all where they are in space and time is in relative distance and place relative to each other. So everything is integrally connected like a giant clock. And this is what I mean by synchronistic time, and that time is the ultimate governing factor, and we are on someone else's schedule. And this is an illusory reality where we have limited free will inside of it, but ultimately the hero story will come again.
Axis, I want you to requote something. The AI is an extension. That little quote you said there.
Well, the AI, so technology, any technology is an extension of human consciousness, and it's a cycle of inward understandings and outward externalizations of that technology. And it's this flow state of mind through physical work brings it into the world. We learn from the cause and effect relationship of our relationship to that new technology in the world. It expands the global consciousness. That has implications for it's like setting the table every time, but on a new level every time that you do this. Mm-hmm. And this takes aeons to play out. Like, it's not just 100 years, it's thousands and thousands of years that these cycles go on for. So when you're talking about who built the pyramids or who did this or that, there is some level of creation that is acting at the light level or the informational coding level that is, we're just replaying it and with our little free wills over and over. And it's building, compounding the returns every single time. And so cryptocurrency is ultimately the newest version of the highest layer of life on Earth for humanity. And that's what's so exciting about being in this space to me, is that it is the product of all of these. This is the ultimate product as of right now, where we stand, our chance at creating the new U.S. Constitution in cyberspace to give us the ability to create technologies that are beyond our wildest dreams.
Well, real quick, I asked that question because you said the AI is an extension and it is tethered to the thing that created it. And I'm going to go back to the Avengers. Ultron. Tony Stark creates Ultron, and Ultron couldn't get away. He effectively had daddy issues. Even though he was its own sentient being, it was still tethered to Tony Stark's vision. Even though it like convinced itself, it perverted the vision, it was still AI, it was still sentient, but it was tethered to Tony Stark. So I thought, we're in the Avengers. That's what that triggered for me.
Well, I think I totally agree that when we develop something like AI, we're actually casting our consciousness into that AI. We're extending our minds into it in this sort of abstract manner. So the transfer of the human consciousness to the silicon is happening now. Every time you hold an iPhone or any smartphone, you're now interacting with the digital world across the API that was given to us. Now, as the AI gets more progressively developed, it's still being taught by humans. And so all of the knowledge that we have is being transferred to the AI. The decision making is also a skill that I feel like we're teaching. And that's also part of what we know how to do. We know how to make decisions. And so letting AI train itself and come up with its own interesting decisions is just a way of, I guess, transferring of the human consciousness into AI as well. So I would say that we're kind of on our way to become Borg at some point, for sure.
And you can even see this transcendence of consciousness even prior to AI with technology like the Gutenberg Bible. And the reason why I say that is this: when you create that's Gutenberg Bible, the printing press. In 1466, you have the creation of the printing press by Johannes Gutenberg. And right after that, 100 years, 200 years, you started having the rise of humanism, the questioning of the geocentric model. Shortly after that, 250, 300 years later, you have the Enlightenment era, which emphasizes consent of the governed, consent of the populace. So there's a transcendence of consciousness here that is not exclusive to AI. There's been technologies that have changed mankind to an extent that even the technological age now, I dare say, was rivaled by previous existing technologies like the printing press.
Well, okay, and so real quick, because I got another super chat, and I really appreciate spending your hard-earned money. Thank you. It's now, Brian. Truly appreciate you, brother. So I want to reel it back in a little bit. Again, we're down the rabbit hole, and that's okay. I love rabbit holes. But I want to bring it back to the theme of the stream. We can get as abstract as we want, and we're being very abstract now, and there's some relevance to the abstractness. Maybe it is all abstract. Who knows? But we as humans having a human experience, one day we woke up and we were conscious of ourselves. We looked into the mirror and we said, who the hell is that guy or girl? We started thinking about, what am I doing? Even on a daily basis, I ask myself, what am I doing here? What is my purpose? So I want to reel it back in just a little bit. And I want to go back to where did we come from? How did we get from point A, whatever that is, to point B, being here and now? And what are we doing here in point B?
So I could be really weird about this. I could say I'm dreaming, you guys, and you will not be able to convince me otherwise.
I can't. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Your characters in my dreaming imagination. And anything you tell me...
I promise. I promise I'm real, Jack.
Okay. I mean, they all say the same thing in my dream.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a good point. How do I know that you're not just a reflection of my own waking dream? You know?
Yeah,
How do I know?
I could be telling you're dreaming me, and how would you know that it's not true?
There's no way to prove it.
So there we go. That's our baseline right there.
Okay, so then if you in your experience there dreaming, all three of us dreaming all of this, where did you come from?
Somebody is dreaming me. You know that song by Enigma, "A Man is a Dream of the Dolphin"?
No.
Oh, you should play that. It's
Sounds
really
amazing though.
Yeah. It's something about a shaman that says something. Remember the old shaman saying, "A man is a dream of the dolphin." So I think dolphin is dreaming me, and I'm dreaming you.
All right. Jack is I'm not saying I disagree. Jack is the result of a dolphin dream. Axis, where did you come from?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I don't know how long you want me to spend on this, but I guess I have to start at the beginning, right? Where there was just I think that everything in all of conscious human experience is literally just a function of the mind. Because if you take away your ability to be self-aware, you don't no longer have the human like experience. So if you go back to the beginning of the universe, whatever that would look like, back when the very first matter started to form, ultimately it was just an electrical signal, which was like a thought going from off to on or from on to off. And that binary pulsing created the very primordial soup of the original chemicals of creation that created the base elements of like rock, water, fire and air, or however you want to define your elements. And then over, millennia of time, 16.4 billion years, or, a cyclical event that it reoccurs, that ultimately it was, that original thought, allowed for the creation of all that it eventually led to human existence. And so then I'm the product of a bunch of cause and effect of mating. And so here I am now. And my body is a product of that level of reality. But I also believe that the human experience is a tripartite, in that your three aspects: you have a body, you have a mind, and you have like some sort of element in between, which is like the movement of how you think and the way that you take action in the world. And it is in that space between, which is, you could call it the spirit or the soul, or like whatever drives your willpower, or that driving force inside of you, that burning passion that you have, the abstract things that create you who you are. And then, side note, for those who struggle with fulfillment in this world and in this reality, they really are out of touch with that element. And then ultimately, I think, the goal is to align with that which makes you feel the best. And so that can either be evil or good. You have to polarize your consciousness in a way that you choose for yourself. And then that will ultimately, now you're on a path. You have a track now. You're either for good or for evil. And that will lead out you to outcomes that will have you be feeling more fulfilled in your life. And so ultimately, we came from evolution of consciousness, and the goal ultimately is to evolve even further and just grow and expand and experience. And it's as simple as that. But if you're not getting fulfillment out of your life, then you need to go back to the drawing board and discover some of these inner intricacies of your life and experience.
So we hear now as the evolution of consciousness, but initial consciousness, initial evolution. Where did existence come from?
It came from awareness. So like something became aware that it existed.
I think
of
awareness
itself.
existed.
We're so human that we want to define it, but as soon as you try to define it, you take away the infinite potential of it.
Yes,
I think the infinite potential has always existed. I mean, just because this universe started 16.4 billion years ago doesn't mean that on another plane of existence, that existence always was there. I think that awareness is very awareness is only awareness by our definition is very different than what an animal is aware of, or any type of different species. So therefore awareness is not cannot be universally applied here, because, for example, a jellyfish that cannot see it has to be aware to be able to feed, or an animal that cannot hear is only aware by its sight, not by its hearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that awareness is also very subjective, and I do believe that the universe, I think that awareness started in this universe around that time, but I believe existence always has, always will, and always will be.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of what we define as existence of.
Yeah. It's a reference point in time. So like it always existed. And that's the answer. It always existed. And there's no other way to define it with English.
So I have a question.
Oh, you go.
About awareness. Let's imagine for a second that there is a universe and there exists only two particles, two hydrogen atoms. That's it. So those two hydrogen atoms, they're zooming around space, and within a particular amount of time, millennia or maybe instantly, doesn't matter, they collide. Now we know from physics they should repel each other, because they're charged similarly, they have a little bit of a mass, and they're going to push on each other. Or we can go back to your previous analogy, axis, and say they're not really touching each other, they're just interfering with each other's fields, and they're electrically repelling each other. It's going to happen. They can't go through each other. Now, the question that I have, is there awareness of that particle, of that atom? Are they aware of each other? They clearly haven't.
It's when they become in close proximity that they gain awareness in the causal effect of their relationship.
So the basic awareness would occur as soon as they end up interfering.
I think so.
Yes,
that's
I would agree
conjecture,
with that.
but I think so.
Okay, so I actually tend to believe that as well. I think awareness begins at the very basic laws of physics.
Mm-hmm.
And so
exactly.
Matter matters to matter.
That actually leads us to believe that the universe has been conscious from its very beginning as soon as the laws of physics were established.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say conscious, I actually, not necessarily of itself, but definitely aware, just because there is interaction of the particles or atoms or
Mm-hmm. And then with that, it's the compounding of
yes
that occurring over and over and over that creates the complexity of life.
So do we trace our lineage to that first interaction?
Here's the part that's interesting, and I haven't figured this out yet, but I have an intuition of it, and that is that maybe the only way to answer that question is by getting to the end of the ultimate end of this. So, like, what would that look like if consciousness became self-transcendent, that it merged back in with all that is and became absolute existence again? You would forfeit your body, your human mind, your spirit. You'd forfeit all those things to become one and rejoin in the union of that original hydrogen particle again. So it's almost like it's like a full. It's like the torus. This movement. It's abstract, but that's ultimately why this is all still an illusion, is because it's just it's a cyclical movement, but with complexity built in, and then it's so complex that my brain wants to break when I try to think about this, because it's like going down a torsion field tunnel infinitely through multiple layers and dimensions of this, like the most crazy geometrical display of harmony and beauty, and because those intrinsic values are the goal, is it's aesthetically pleasing. Like, that is something that people would argue that there's a subjectivity to this, but ultimately, if you poll like a large population of people, they're going to generally say one thing is more aesthetically pleasing than another. And I think that's where consciousness is drawn toward. And so, but ultimately, I think we are trying to evolve consciousness back into the absolute, or just become aware that we always were a fragmented piece of that absolute nature, which is ever pervading and always existing.
So I believe that there is an eternal fight, and it sounds like I was going to say good and evil. The reality is it's chaos, entropy, and order. That is where the true fight occurs. So
yep,
when we see something that's we all commonly agree that's pleasing, likely we're looking at the pattern that happens to dictate order. Like, for example, the golden ratio is present everywhere, the Fibonacci numbers.
Bang.
The pyramids and speed of light, right? Like those things are common to our reality. We tend to agree that those are the pleasing things. And I think the reason why we like them is because out of those building blocks of order, more order comes, bigger complexity. Now, when we look into the chaos and things are random and unpredictable, and there's like vertices of something and impossible to make order, that is the true entropy. So the universe is fighting the entropy pretty much continuously, and building and expressing itself through order. And that's where the consciousness and awareness first comes to be. So when the two particles interact, that is the first time the order interacted with itself and followed the particular sets of rules, right? And that's where the beginning was. And so the absence of consciousness would be complete entropy and complete chaos. That is the true end. It's not the end in the energetic way, but it is the end of order, not the end of consciousness, life, awareness, whatever that is. But the true death would be destruction of a pattern or a chaotic pattern overtaking. I mean, and there's no such thing as chaotic pattern. There would be an oxymoron, right? There's no pattern to chaos.
No, there isn't. And that's why, like, I go back to that quote by Immanuel Kant, which is basically, everywhere we see a chain of cause and effect, of means and ends, of order and arising and perishing. And I would dare say that his synonymous notion of order and disorder is the part of the quote that says arising and perishing. There is order that comes from chaos, and vice versa. There is peace that comes from war in the human animal, for example. So I do believe the end result, and I believe order and disorder in the universe is actually synonymous. You brought up good and evil before. You said you didn't want to say that. But I do believe that order and disorder, in accordance to the human animal, is very similar to the discussion of order and disorder, good and evil. I think they have some synonymous attributes in regards to what is good and what isn't good. So I do believe the end goal here is, without question, order in an otherwise disorderly universe. And that's my belief on where the universe is going, to a natural state of order.
So will the future AI decide that humans are too chaotic and enslave them?
It's a good question.
Yes, of course.
Well, I don't think you can answer it.
If I was the AI, I would be like, those pesky humans, those monkeys. It's time for
Assuming that there was no breakaway civilization, which we know that is something that happens, and in reality is that certain sects of humanity evolves beyond that which they came from, and so then they kind of branch off and do their own thing. And you see that in the private sector all the time, in the way that companies are ran. And then like the strong survive and then the weak die off. That's just natural fall off of the product of evolution of consciousness. So I think ultimately order is the end game, but in the same respect, disorder is what creates fertile ground for that new wave of order.
I guess the question is that between the if we assume that order is part of evolution and that's how the universe expresses itself, what if there were two factions and they were both orderly, but they were working against each other? So wouldn't like if we imagine that the creation of AI is a projection of a human consciousness into silicon, and that silicon just happens to be executing better and more orderly, wouldn't it be natural for that silicon to say that those humans with emotions and their hormonal imbalances are too volatile and they're just, bothering each other first and foremost, and they need to be, put into a zoo or something like that?
I don't know if that would do that, but it would definitely ask the question.
Well, if it asks the question, then it may as well be doing things.
Well, see,
it's not going to be like philosophizing about it. It's going to like say, okay, that is a problem we need to be solving.
Yes, probably. And again, I have to lean on the Matrix for that. Obviously, it's just a movie in Hollywood, but to me, that seems like the most logical play out of that scenario. But even, you guys have said so much. There's so much I want to speak to. But chaos, I don't believe that we can get away from chaos, even with the AI. Because, okay, so the Hermetic philosophy speaks about a phenomenon called the divine paradox. How we can never, like you were saying, Axis, you can never put your finger or use the words to describe truth, God, whatever, because it exists beyond all that. So every attempt to describe it, even this one I'm making right now, is an injustice to it because it's above anything in any language that anybody could possibly say ever. But where the divine paradox comes into play is in this chaos, at the same time, there is order. this system is beautiful and perfect. And even though it's all chaotic and weird to our singularity point of perception, to it, it's all happening within it, and without it, there is no imperfection. It is perfect. So even AI itself isn't going to be this perfect being. It cannot be, because it is still only one feature or facet of the all, of the architect. So it's still going to have its imperfections. It is still intelligent, in a lower form of intelligence.
Well, I totally agree, but we're not talking about the absolute perfection or absolute order. We're talking about levels of order. They're trying to compete with each other on the evolutionary ladder of whose order is better for longevity, for example. It doesn't mean that the higher level of intelligence or silicon intelligence is actually necessarily perfect. It just means that it has more means to evolve.
It's interesting, Jack, because I think that you could almost draw this parallel between two different ways of running a country, for example, which is one which is more vertically integrated, such as like communism, versus like constitutional republic of the United States. One exists from like a ground up approach, and one is like a top down approach. And it's like, well, which one will play out? Which one will win ultimately? And I think it's a function of the participants involved over the period of time which you're surveying. And so, you got to give us a time frame. You got to give us, what is the AI made of? Is it silicon? Is it carbon? Is it even carbon? Is it something else? Is it diamond? Is it, some other, quantum technology? Is it in all those factors, and on the timeline by which, if you give humans enough time to evolve, there's a chance that this comes back to the ethics and moralities of these things. If humanity has a chance to compete against it, because it is again another war.
What if? Sorry. What if it already happened? What if we're in a zoo? We're an experiment by a sentient AI. It doesn't matter what form it is. It could be quantum, could be silicon, could be this like NVIDIA based. The point is that we think that
this is another interesting, totally different take. But yeah, I see where you're going with this. Is like, if we're already existing inside of this, that the illusion.
It doesn't even need to be an illusion. It could be kind of like kind of like a zoo where the animals feel like they're in their natural environment, but if you like look beyond the defense, we just don't see defense. It's hidden.
And there's something to be said about the hierarchical structure of humanity. You brought up communism versus constitutional republicanism, and it's always that struggle between equality, equity, and hierarchical structures. And I believe when you look at humanity and you look at its relation to the universe, there is this type of hierarchical structure that has existed and will most likely always exist, even if it's weeded out of humanity. I believe that hierarchy is the calling card of existence as a result of technological innovation, as a result of spiritual evolution. There's a hierarchy of technological innovation. There's a hierarchy of taking steps to understand the notion of this architect and whatever you want to call it. So I do believe that all of this conjunction with humanity in regards to hierarchy does not necessarily have to mean despotism. Hierarchy does not necessarily have to mean that something, although is on a higher part of the pyramid, does not necessarily mean that there is inequities as a result of that hierarchy. Especially when you're talking about non-sentience versus sentience. I mean, human beings are arguably sentient, but from a hierarchical standpoint, we have not reached the technological peak of the hierarchy. So is the technology that isn't in existence yet oppressing us because it's simply a higher version of that hierarchy? I don't think so. I think that because of free will, humanity has the ability to create despotic hierarchy, and that is or a benevolent hierarchy. So I think that's a question of where we go in the future surrounding technological and spiritual innovation as we start figuring out these answers to these universal questions on where we come from, why do we exist, how is existence in relation to hierarchical function and order and disorder? Is order and disorder synonymous with hierarchy or equity? I mean, not equity, or a base where there is no hierarchy. These are questions that need to be answered, and I think that hierarchy in itself has always existed during humanity, and even in a constitutional republic, there are those with power that have more power than us. You have the executive branch, you have the bureaucrats, you have the legislative branch, you have the judicial branch, you have the laws that keep us in line. So I think that there is definitely a hierarchical structure in humanity, and that's as a result of the pack mentality, the tribalistic mentality that exists in human nature, and that will take thousands of years, if not millions of years, to weed out. And I think technology, as a result of sentience, will breed that type of hierarchical structure even in AI.
Well, there's actually two things. So hierarchy is innate to all our organisms. And the way that you can see it from the fact that most of life came from mutation. So the cells mutated, and the cells that had better mutation protocols were outcompeting the cells that were weaker. And that's the first, I guess, innings of the hierarchy right there. So the mutation is a natural way to make better life, which means that the weaker ones die out, the future ones live longer, they pass on their encoded genes and their programming further in the future. So that is impossible to remove. It's exists within the cellular level. However, as humans and I would say self-aware entities evolved, the mutation towards compassion actually created more offspring. So in other words, I have seen a documentary somewhere, and there was a statement in a picture. The first time compassion and therefore humanity and consciousness came to be is when they discovered one of the thicker bones in the human body. The bone of the leg was actually braced by another, I guess, pre-human entity. So human or pre-human who would break their leg would not survive, and the bone will not heal in time for them to feed themselves. And they discovered that it was actually long time ago, maybe 200,000 years ago, maybe older, maybe 100,000 years ago. But it was actually put together, braced by some sort of a device, maybe by a piece of a tree or something like that. And that's how that pre-human has survived. And so they were saying, the scientists were saying that this is where the compassion and the first I guess principles of humanity came to be, and that's how we survived. Now the other thing is, like Joe Rogan talks about it all the time. He likes apes. He talks about monkeys and apes all the time. He was alluding to the fact that the best alpha males in the pack of apes are the nice ones, because the one who is oppressing everyone else, the lower alphas, they're just waiting for a moment to tear him apart.
Yep.
Like destroy him. Any moment of weakness, he's toast. Now the one who is nice can be alpha until he dies, because he is the organizer. He protects the troop. Manages.
He's the sage. He becomes the sage.
Yeah, everybody comes and shows their babies to him, and he blesses them, and that sort of thing. And because he's nice, right? So he ends up living longer and obviously procreating longer too. So those genes get a better chance at life. So compassion has a genetic component, I would say. Mm-hmm. We see it in apes.
Mm-hmm. That's very powerful.
And that's why, like, if you look at Cyrus the Great, who was the founder of the I can't pronounce it, but it's the Achaemenid Empire. He was loved. He's actually in whatchamacallit. He was loved, and he's also referenced in the Hebrew Bible because he embraced all previous civilized nations and beliefs and cultures in that particular region. And the Achaemenid Empire at the time was the largest empire in history. So what you're talking about, Jack, with the concept of a benevolent, I want to use the word benevolent dictator, if they respect culture, and I really believe wholeheartedly that if you have that ability to respect previous civilized cultures and religions while being a benevolent leader, you will be remembered. And that notion that you're talking about, where people want to tear that person apart, I think it'll always exist, but it will not be as prevalent if you are respected rather than feared. I mean, even members of the Nazi Party tried to assassinate Hitler. I believe it was twice. So this is proven true time and time again. You saw it also with the czars in the early 1900s. This is something that happens consistently. Julius Caesar is another one. So this is not something that's not uncommon.
Okay. We're at about an hour, 20 minutes. First of all, does anybody have to go? I don't want to impose on anybody's time. You're good?
Let's get to 2 hours.
I'm gonna probably head out, KG. I messaged you. I don't feel good.
Well,
we appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been feeling sick.
You were good input for sure.
Yeah, it was good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks for bringing the sauce, brother.
Yeah, be well, guys. Okay.
All right.
Later, bro. Rest up.
Get well.
See you.
See you, man.
So the next question, and look, I put everybody's Twitter handle in the description. Make sure to give Corey a follow. Make sure to give all these guys a follow. Let's take it to the third question of the night. Well, second, I don't know if we've addressed the second question, but third question. What are we doing here? Right? What is my purpose as a human being? Is it malleable? Is it individualized? Is there some principle that we can all apply to ourselves?
You should follow first principles of being.
Which are?
Well, there's many. But I would say, to me, it's the alignment of the will of the universe with my actions. So if I am vibrating with the universal principles, and it actually comes from physics too, then I'm likely going to be in harmony, and I become the avatar of the universal expression of the ways and reasons why the universe created the order out of the chaotic environment it was originally in. If it was, maybe it never been. So, but I would say that to me, if I'm vibing with or aligning myself, following my true north, so to speak, and it happens to be similar to what the universe was to evolve into, then likely that would be my purpose.
Yeah, alignment and balance ultimately. So similar to what Jack is saying, like that is the two driving, motivating factors of order, right? And if you like, human consciousness can exist in a chaotic state. It does all the time, but it's always lower energy and lower level. So it exists in the lower levels of the hierarchy of human consciousness. And it is up to you to ultimately organize your mind, your ideas, your actions, so that you feel fulfilled in your own alignment, and you can, over time, develop a sense of balance between those thoughts. And when you do that, your life gets a lot better. You have more success, and your relationships get better, and you start making better decisions that make you a healthier being, because we are a function of our chemistry. So if you're eating the wrong foods, or you're consuming toxic content on the internet, or you could go down the rabbit hole of that too. Like it's ultimately up to us to hold true to ourselves the values that we hold dear, that makes us feel fulfilled. And again, I'm not telling you to be good or evil. I'm saying pick a side and go with it, because now you're on a track and you're aligning with something, because it's only from chaos that you get really a meaningless drill, like just a blah life that is ultimately headed nowhere, and then you just turn back into mud and like die. And like who, like that's not gonna make you anything which way. It's just gonna be a meaningless existence. So you need to get your purpose from aligning with what you seek and what you feel and what you're pulled to. And you know what it feels like when you're in a room with a bunch of people that you feel no connection to, you feel on edge, you're not comfortable. That's the stuff you want to stay away from. You want to be in a room with people you feel good with, that you're doing stuff together and you're learning, you're growing, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of you being in alignment with your highest truth and your highest purpose in the universe at that time. And then that begins to compound as you continue to have those experiences, and the experiences start coming to you in a sort of mysterious way. And when you start recognizing more miracles and more synchronicities and more things that you couldn't explain before happening in your very life, is when you know that you're closer to the alignment with your higher purpose and that of the absolute evolution of consciousness.
So that sounds beautiful and great, and I'm totally agreeing. However, let's imagine the person that we're talking to has schizophrenia. Now, everything that they see and imagine and is actually a product of their mind imagining things. They literally do not see the reality the same way. They see things coming to them that are not there, or they see things that are positive in a negative light, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So the brain chemistry is misaligned, unbalanced, whether it's genetic or induced by a drug or anything else, or human condition, right? So that is, those type of thing is tough to deal with.
Yeah, they need healing through compassion, and that was one of the evolutionary traits you touched on earlier, which is it's going to take service from others, propping them up and helping them heal. And sometimes they never heal in a lifetime, but all we can do is make them comfortable. And it's unlikely that those people procreate and that gets passed on. But in the event that it does, maybe it's just 1 degree less in the next iteration, and then that can also, with further compassion and healing, that version of that new person could heal it out of the bloodline even more. But it's just bloodlines and just passed down. It's through compassion and service to others that gets healed.
Yeah. So I had a friend. I wouldn't say like a really good friend, but just a good acquaintance. We met many times. He overdid psychedelics, like hero doses of everything. And he basically lost his mind. I could no longer recognize what he was saying. Basically, he developed schizophrenia. Like he would text me and say, remember all those things that we talked about, and you said this and I said that and I said this and we said that, and like he would repeat the conversation, and he would say that I know what you meant by that. And it would be like something very, very negative, like I was trying to oppress him by saying this one particular element. So he was literally replaying his mind and assigning negativity to pretty much everything and trying to explain, I guess, his depression, maybe that's what happened. But he tried to explain that not by like the drug use, but by all of the other people did things to him. It's not his fault, that sort of thing. So that was very interesting. I mean, interesting in a sad kind of way, because I knew him as one other person, very bright, a developer, and then now he became completely bonkers. So, and the thing is
that happened. Like it's sometimes people, you can go too far with those sorts of things.
So what's interesting is that he came from what he believed an abusive family. Can't really go too much into details here, but he was thinking that the psychedelic use was actually healing his mind from the abuse that he has experienced. But I think what happened is that just amplified what he felt before.
It's very tricky when you get into that stuff, because going into it for the first, second, and third times, there's like a point in there where you can come to self-actualization and self-realization. But if you push too far and you don't reach that point, then it goes the other way. But I think ultimately that stuff should be taken with caution, and that really what he was probably missing was, and this is no reflection on you or whoever was around him at that time, but he needed more to be open more with people that were close to him, and to try to come to terms with that reality. But instead, he kind of used that as an escape. It seems like he thought that maybe that was the only solution, and that closed-mindedness and limiting his own mind actually led him.
So what was really interesting is that when his closer friends were trying to stop him from the psychedelic drug use, he would just attack those people and say that you're trying to stop me from healing myself.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there was actually like a self-reinforcing thing, like, okay, they're attacking me, therefore they're trying to stop me from being better.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, human mind can be so difficult to deal with, especially anytime when it comes to self-development. How can a brain develop itself when our thoughts can be so convoluted and so potentially, receive this sort of a reality in such a subjective manner?
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it, right, KG? That's like where the mystery and the magic happens.
100%. And this is, I love that we're on this topic now, because you see, we were on this like total abstract plane. Now we're talking about like self-help and like actual grounded worldly things. And, we have this whole genre of literature, self-help. And the author that I like most in this region is a guy named Napoleon Hill. He's most known for his book Think and Grow Rich, but he's well beyond that one particular book. He talks about this phenomena called hypnotic rhythm, and he talks about it because he says that all humans are able to shape who they want to be by listening to who they know they are. So by being real and truthful to yourself and living that out and being honest with yourself and taking steps to manifest that, we can live a fulfilled life. But what happens is, on that path, we can become drifters. And drifters are people, we all know drifters. We've all been drifters, where you're just, you're waking up, you're doing your thing, you're going through life. You don't really have any goals or aims. You're kind of just living. Well, what he says is that there's a point where you drift for so long that you enter into a state of hypnotic rhythm. And I think he wrote about this because, just like your friend Jack, hearts out to you, bro, hearts out to him. I'm sorry that happened. You get so wrapped up in these narratives, so wrapped up in these states of being, that you can no longer see outside of them. They cannot be helped anymore. Maybe. He was kind of on the fence about the idea, but he got to the point to where he literally, like, schizophrenia possibly could be another example of hypnotic rhythm, where yes, they were born with that condition, but still they're in such a state that they cannot see beyond that. Like, self-awareness or consciousness to some extent has left. Like, they don't have that spell anymore. They don't have that like skill or attribute anymore.
I think the key was that he lost balance.
Yes. And lost it to such an extent that, like, you can't regain it. Is that like, and I don't know. I tango with that. Like, are some people, okay. So I'll finish this thought here. So there's another guy named Bob Proctor, who is a contemporary of Napoleon Hill, who talks about, like, anybody, he's like a success principles type guy. And he says that anybody can take these principles and apply them to their life. And I wonder, like, I want to believe that. I do. I want to believe that anybody can accomplish what they set their mind to. But is that true? Does everybody really have this power? I want to believe it. I do, because I want every human being to be able to experience this reality. But do they?
Probably not. I mean, the easy way to discredit this story is that if I wanted to become a president, I just cannot do it because I wasn't born here in this country. So,
well, to that, you would say, when there's a will, there's a way. But I would say you don't have the will to be president. So of course there's not a way. So our will aligns with what the way is.
Well, you could say that you need to be more specific. What if you change countries and be somewhere where you could actually be accepted as the president? Or maybe all you need to do is feel presidential. You don't need to have the title. I mean, there's many different ways to play with that. But certainly you can say there's a will, there's a way, but there's also will of other people, right? Like somebody isn't willing to be subjected to my will, technically. Like
Well,
where?
that. Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm finished.
Well, I was gonna say so this is where I like to enter into occult philosophy, not cult,
Occult.
but occult,
With an O.
with an O, because they talk about magicians and how each individual is their own magician, and just like so there is arguably NPCs, right? There's people the drifters, the people in hypnotic rhythm, they're just out there, they're the people in Grand Theft Auto. You just go hit with the bat so you can get a few green blocks. Like those people just exist out there. But then you have the magicians who are aware and conscious. They're the Morpheuses, the Trinities, the Neos, the operators, the tanks, right? Those types of people who are conscious of the reality that they're living in. And then you get a battle of wills. Because if I'm out there exerting my will, but somebody else has their will that they're trying to exert, well, it's like whose will is the will? Well, then you get to light and dark magic, and you get into all these the Sith, the Jedi, right there. Boom, you got Darth Vader and Yoda. Whose will's stronger? Well, that's where it's like they're equal, yin and yang, but then arguably the light, the white magic is always 1 degree stronger, so to speak, because it always penetrates through darkness. So it seems darkness will have its day. It rules for some time, but the light can't stop it.
Well, it seems to be the light is just more common among the majority. So the oppressors are always fewer than the majority. We see it everywhere. By the way, do you ever go to a library?
Yeah.
KG?
We had our last interview. I was in a library.
Yeah. So library code 133.2. You should visit it.
Say that. What is that?
133.2.
Google that or what?
No. You go to the library. You will locate a row 100, row 200. Between the row 100 and the row 200, there is a library code 133.2. That is the code you need to go to.
All right, put that in chat for all. And also, Ghaffar, welcome to the chat, brother. Good to see you.
Hello. Lord Hedron.
You're on mute, brother, if you're there.
Ghaffar is actually an incredible individual. He hails from Jamaica, and Jamaicans actually have a really cool philosophical, religious, I don't want to put an incorrect term on it, but approach to life. Like one thing that I've learned, and Ghaffar, if you're there listening, please feel free to call me stupid and tell me I'm wrong. But one thing that I learned from Jamaican philosophy was that how we in Western say to understand things, well, that puts you below the thing that you are stating that you somehow are above. So in some forms, and look, Ghaffar is going to correct me, but Jamaican philosophy is you can overstand things, right? You can become above the thing that you were ignorant to previously. So Ghaffar I wish you'd pop on the mic because this dude's incredible.
He said he's just getting situated is all. He'll be in here in a minute.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I do agree. I think that, word magic is very real. Like when you spell a word is the same as casting.
It's spelling,
a spell.
Bro. It's spelling.
Yeah.
Why do they call it spelling?
Well, and again, this is all just, true comprehension happens only in the mind, right? It's only on your end that you can comprehend something, even if you can hear through the vibratory complex of the voice. This compound words, prepositional phrases, all these things, ultimately it's only in your mind that it becomes comprehended. And so then in that process of decoding and comprehending, do those words have a certain intent behind them that you can either accept or reject? And so that's why, especially in the English language, there's so much confusion, is because words can be meant many different ways, and even in legal terms, there's a lot of pitfalls in there because of wordplay and things like this. But the truth, the ultimate truth, the absolute truth, is ever pervasive, and the intent, when used in such a way, will permeate through those confusions, and those will just become distortions of the ultimate intent behind the statement.
Very true.
Welcome, bro. How are
Welcome,
you?
brother.
Hey guys, night. Is my background bad? Are you hearing my background?
I can hear it, but I can hear you, and that's what's most important.
Okay, cool. Because I live with family and house is still active. Let me just officially say goodnight to all you guys here. KG, you know me, brother. I love talking to you about these stuff. Um, I want to say also, Jack Levin, as a holder of the assets that you created with that contract. It's officially nice to be in a space with you for the first time, I think. And is this Axis?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful, man.
Yeah,
It's good
I
to
followed you
be
today,
talking to
man.
you.
It's fine.
Yes, you
Nice to
did.
finally see your face, bro. I
Um,
didn't know who was who back when Hadron launched, though.
yeah,
Nice to finally meet you.
yeah, you're welcome, man. I will follow you shortly after this. Just got in off the road. Was my friend's mother's funeral today. I had work and all that stuff. So I told KG yesterday I'm going to be making it here with you guys. Um, but yeah, interesting conversation around the terminology and the spelling of certain words, right? And the intended meaning. I learned I learned to comprehend the understanding of the word, like for example, understand, right? If something stands under the authority of something else, it is in total control of the narrative, the worldview, and or impact of what is going to affect you. In Jamaica, we use the term overstand because we intend to see a different path for whatever comes to us as truth or fact about something. That is great for what it is. As individuals, we have the responsibility to override or assess differently whatever affects us. It doesn't matter that something is set in stone somewhere else or this is the way it should be. There's a lot of things that we could assume that it should be a particular way. But if I'm standing under the authority of it, that means for the rest of my life, for the rest of my days, I have no control over the things I should control. And it most times only goes for the things that we should have control over. We don't try to control time and outcomes of everything. Control only that of which you're in control of. That's essentially what it means. And then I also learned when to not use the word understand. Like we're here talking and somebody goes, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but, and they immediately discredit everything that was said before with establishing a foundation of understanding, as it's called, with their viewpoint. And then they use the word but, the most negative word in the English language, but. Because what that also does, it puts everything that was established before from both parties and put one party's entire viewpoint to the side. It's crazy because when I just came across these things, I did not want to accept them. But over time, the more I use them, the more I establish them for myself. I realize that these are actually very negative ways of expressing myself. So I tend to it costs me every time I use the word "but." Actually, like in conversations, I would make this bet with myself that every time I use it, I'd have to pay myself 20 Jamaican dollars, and those things add up. And then I increased that after when I thought that, oh yeah, the $20 was kind of easy. I did 50, and I'm trying to push that to 100, and it helped me to kind of stop using the words. Yeah, but that's what it is.
Yeah, it's a function of being not conscious with our words. We need
Yeah.
to be more conscious and have more thought put into every word that exits your mouth hole.
I agree with that.
If we fail to do so, we lead ourselves astray. And so, just take a simple logic course and you'll find that most of the way modern people speak is they're consistently committing logical fallacies over and over and over. And having an argument with almost anybody is never an argument because they're failing to properly digest the conversation and present an argument.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, KG, I'm gonna leave a compliment here. Jack does that a lot. I've had the privilege of listening to some of the spaces that he's been on, watching some of the YouTube videos. You know, post him actually being on the video productions. Um, and Jack, I must compliment you on this. You have a very subtle way of absorbing feedback. And I don't know you personally, and this is the first time we're going to talk, but I respect that with your character. It's always this measured way of using your words to represent what your thoughts and your intents are, and I have respect for that. I had a lot of that with Alex, as you know, KG from Hedron. Um, a lot of subtle ways of just absorbing a lot of data, not assuming that you have everything known because you have certain skill sets, but more importantly, you figure that you're gonna have to interact with people and comprehend where they're coming from, not because they're right or wrong, but that's just how they see the world. You know, I have respect for that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very kind.
You're welcome.
It's one of the reasons I wanted him on here. I mean, the amount of brain power that's in this virtual space right now is, I just feel fortunate that I can even reach out to you gentlemen and say, hey, let's come together. And
Me too.
You thought that before you found out that the dolphin was dreaming me.
I still feel that there is literally nothing that anybody could say that would ever make me think they're crazy, or I may not agree with not even the dolphin thing. I have no idea. I may not agree with somebody or something, but it's like, who am I? The only thing that I know for sure is that I know absolutely nothing for sure. So I'm just trying to learn and absorb and just grow. So look, you could be very right. I could be a dolphin's fart for all I know. I have no idea. I could just be a little air bubble popping on the ocean. But uh, so I do want to ask the final question of the stream. But before we get there, and if you guys have to go, I do want to respect your time. But before we go there, I want to hear Gaffar's answer on. So Ghaffar, feel free to elaborate if you so desire. The Where did we come from, and what are we doing here?
Wow, very interesting question. I actually think we're the aliens here. I say that first because sometimes I do feel that way. I think I've come to believe, which is subjective, but I've come to believe that we operate differently from many things here, but also many things here operate far differently from we do. Right? There's something about us that gives us this comprehension of the environment that we're in, and we're at one end of the spectrum, we're exceptionally exploitative at it, and then the other end of the spectrum, it's so caring and meaningful with its intention as a species. Now, where do we come from? That's the hard one for me, because I don't think anything specifically comes from anywhere that's different. In that, like for example, we're humans, but we could have been from 15 galaxies away or whatever. I think all of that stuff is a part of a process that is generated by energies and frequencies. Now, we are a representation of energies and frequencies, right? This thing that we have is called life is like a gift. And at 33 years old, I've learned to accept that I enjoy the process of something, the process of exchanging my energy with someone else, is learning to absorb from that, comprehending where they're coming from, and then being able to use that as fuel, as part of my expression of the gift I have called life. But I don't think specifically we come from something that never happened before. I think all of creation started somewhere. Where is that place? I honestly don't care to know where it came from, because I feel like I'm a part of that. But I do occupy a lot of time thinking to myself, where do we intend on being as a
Hmm.
species? Right? So some people may think that we're gonna be living on other planets, and we're gonna go to Mars, and we're gonna, become cyborgs and all that stuff. But the best way to look at the future, where human beings are going, like with anything else, is to assess the past, and as much data as we can get on the past to look where we're going. We know for a fact that biologically we evolve. We know for a fact that with technology and the natural system of biological transformation, we're going to change. We do know that as our environment changes, it is going to change us whether or not we like it. It doesn't matter what technologies we build or how much our our limbs may seem different over millennia, right? So for me, I look at it as it's not a we thing. It's not a human species thing. We're one speck of all the different creative expressions of life or the gift of life as a part of a cycle. And I think the cycle far outweighs whatever or wherever we think we're going at. The cycle for me is what I concern myself about more. I look at evolutionary cycles as spiritual cycles. It is meant to be, it's an ordained process, right? So sometimes we may, like, for example, a growing up Christian, um, I find that one of the fundamental principles of the Christian way is, and I don't mean this negatively, but you want somebody one day to come and save you from your sins,
Mm.
right? To help you correct yourself for your wrongs and or right, and you may be selected to go to heaven or stay on earth in a in a pristine paradise one day. It's a replenish type of human experience, right? You get to repeat what you had done before and rebuild and redo. All of that is mentioned in the first book of Genesis, if in the Christian narrative of life. Uh, I do struggle with that sometimes because for me, I'm not looking for someone or some entity to save me. I do have a foundation in understanding that whether or not I think what I'm doing is right or wrong for me, there is a system of being that is going to autocorrect that whether or not I like it. And it will flush me out, repurpose, replenish me, and I'll be recycled, right? That's the beauty of life and death. I heard Steve Jobs say this one statement. This is the one that stuck with me from many of the things he said. He said, he learned that death is life's change agent, and that one sentence for me summed up so many things. Is like, I'm coming from a funeral today. We were there, we were crying. It's a sad moment to watch my best friend put his mom in the ground. I was there holding the casket, but all of that is a process by which we celebrate the dead. It has nothing to do with the process of what's really happening. The funeral is not the death. The death is the physical body is going to be broken down because that body no longer can sustain the intensity of the frequency called living. It no longer can. It has to, that's the part of it that has to be replaced. But the frequency that causes us to live, it never goes anywhere. So that's how we get to repeat. And I'm not at a point where I hold firm to this. We all get to live everlasting life because of a rule that was set. Jack, you write code, you develop. When you have the code that says we're going to allow you to repurpose or refill or redistribute something when you have a particular line of code that says every time there is one human being and you produce another human being from this process called sex, it produces another version of you, and that's how you live forever. I'm being serious. I'm being very serious. We create
incredible. It's incredible.
We create our futures by making children. So if you want to live forever, have children. It's a very, very straightforward, clear line of code that is there. It is ever serving, ever purposeful. And as long as the circumstances in life, the tyrannies and the happy moments are in favor of the kid, that kid should outlive you for your latter years, watch you die, bury you, and replace you. You don't even have to worry about having that kid trying to be like you. They're already programmed to be the next version of you.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what you do. It's like staking and having a staking reward. and the rewards keep coming.
Sex is like minting.
Yes. It's literally minting the next version of yourself. And that's why you'll find families that get caught up in, trying to create legacies and keep memories of this, because they realize that that's an important part of the process. Now, some people might convolute it for different reasons and get it right or wrong, but at the end of the day, we all try to build a legacy called the next version of myself, the minted version of myself for the future. That for me, if whatever religion you believe in or whatever way you see life, that's the only way to assure us a future as a part of a cycle of everything that's happening. And it's not only us. The trees do it, the other animals do it, the mountains do it, even they get replaced. right? We call it tectonic plate movements, but it's just a breaking and making of things that remain constant in a cycle. And it's an ever going cycle. It doesn't need to worry about starting over or stopping because it's an ever going energy. And I think that's where we're from. We're a part of the ebb and flow of that energy. That's it for me. That's made a lot of peaceful thought processes in my mind.
So well said. And I think you said a lot of what we have been saying. And now it's actually interesting. Look, first of all, I apologize. Sorry, not my fault, but I'm sorry to hear that friend to friend that you're going through the loss and your friend is
Yeah.
going through the loss. But that
Thanks.
actually lends itself to the final question of the stream.
Yeah.
Where are we going? What happens when my individual and subjective life ends? The thing that makes me KG and you Ghaffar and Jack and Axis, where does that thing go? I know my body gets eaten by worms and turns into bird poop, but where do I go? Where do you go? Where do we go?
Well, assuming there's you to begin with.
I feel like there's me. I think, therefore, I am.
Yeah.
That's what Morpheus also said. You know, the one in the latest Matrix 4. Remember how he was stuck in a what is it, module or something? They were evolving him in there to
right.
Yeah.
Neo build like this program that captured, I guess, Morpheus until he evolved into a conscious being or something like that.
Yeah.
It was very interesting, actually, very interesting. But anyway, he thought he was real.
Well, okay, I hear you and I agree, but considering, okay, so taking it down a degree, I suppose.
Okay.
No, because I don't disagree. I promise.
Okay.
But you Jack, you have a wife, you have children, you have a dog, you eat food, you sleep, you like clothes. That guy, he's real to you. Where does he go?
Well, currently I'm in the process of embedding myself into Zen, and anytime you mint Zen, you mint a little bit of me. It's kind of a spiritual endeavor for me. So anytime you interact with my code, you interact with a piece of my mind. So that's where I go, and I'll never leave.
Fair point. I hear exactly what you're saying. Axis, what do you think?
So just as far as where I think the four of us are going to go, I think we're going to do great things. I think we're going to stay aligned with our highest purpose, and we're going to have the downstream effects of our actions in this lifetime are not quantifiable at this time because we're all pretty bright people that have a lot of plans, you know. And beyond that, I think, you know, there's probably a whole locus of people like us out in the world that are going to evolve spiritually, mentally, and develop new awesome technologies that is going to create a new foundation for a new world. And that means going deeper inward into the understandings of what the human experience is all about. But that also means leaving Earth and creating societies on other planets and in other dimensions.
That sounds great.
So
Powerful.
I'm in.
I'm in too. But okay, so let me follow up your point there with Axis dies. His life here on Earth, as we can relate to it, is over. What happens to Axis?
Well, the real question is what happens to us? Like, what if he's imagining us?
He could be, but
that's what I'm worried about.
See, he could be.
Better stay alive then.
I think that it's kind of funny you say that because I do believe that in my belief of you guys, I'm making the ground fertile for like a trampoline. It's going to make you guys be able to launch yourselves further out into the world. Your ideas will go farther. Because we compound each other's effectiveness in the world. This is the importance of social networks. And this is again goes back to breakaway civilizations and innovative new technologies and all of these things that are important for the evolution of consciousness, for the humanity to really reach its highest potential and, reach ultimate, truest wisdom and truest alignment with the absolute, to get as close as we can to the edge before you do merge back into all that is. That is where we are going.
Yeah, I like that. And I think one important point to note that with the creation of internet and our ability to communicate, the human mass consciousness is integrating itself into a more coherent whole. And the presence of the cryptocurrency gives fair, decentralized value that can add participants in a fair way from anywhere. And that's what's really exciting to me. So I almost feel like the planet is building the sort of a neural network that's learning from itself. And obviously Google plays a big part of it, because Google is like this gateway into everybody's brains. Because think about it, the web pages that people have created, they have left their knowledge for us to discover and to interact with. We don't have to carry it in our minds continuously and memorize things. We can simply interact with the web and Google and internet and connect to like-minded people or people who find interesting. So the quickening of the human evolution on a conscious level is becoming more and more of a planetary phenomena. And that's where I want to spend the rest of my life, building and doing and interacting and creating new things. So I'm not really thinking about like what happens when I'm gone. I would be happy to be gone if I were a good, solid contributor to the better ecosystem that we're building for humanity.
That's a part that stands out for me too, Jack. The ability to contribute to making or manufacturing something that works as a solution or a benefit to people is very important to me. But firstly, it should serve me too, right? So I'm not going to say I'm completely at peace with the process of death, even though I think I have a good enough understanding that helps me to create peace while I'm sad by the process, right? I do look forward to respectfully dying physically one day. I am not one of those people that think I want to live forever physically in this body. I think this one should turn off after a while. I want to get to 100. My grandaunt that we buried 2 years ago, she said, I'm gonna die today, and she died today. She said, I'm gonna die, right? And I think with age, not only does the mind get wiser about what's happening, but I think it's also, if you look across other animals, species, if a snake wants to die, what does it do? It goes and it curls itself up on the perch. It won't drink, it won't eat, and it will lay there for as long as it takes, and it will die. Animals do the same thing. Dogs, cows, when it's the time to go, they go and they curl themselves in a little corner. That is it. You can try to feed them, you can try to do everything, and you're there looking at them. If you force feed them, you're going to keep doing the same thing because they know it's time to go from this form. So the physical form is one of the things I've learned. Like, if you look back, the amount of data we have as a species, the physical form has to go. It's a part of the agreement with the code. The side of it that is spiritually connected, where we feel like a personality. A person is a mask. We put a mask on life so that we have a character that we can work with. That's your avatar. So my avatar is Ghaffar Kareem Ellis. Jack Levin is Jack Levin, and KG is KG, and Axis is Axis. And you get to own that avatar for as long as you want, not because somebody's giving you permission. The fact that you get the gift of life, you have the responsibility to own whatever character you want to own and play with. That character can be forever, it can be tweaked, it can be changed, whatever, but the physical form of that character will have to go. That is a natural part of the cycle. So for me, as I said again, the energy, the frequency that keeps us living is not just physical. Everything we see around us and experience is us. Everything that we get ourselves involved in is us. There's a reason why the internet is there and the blockchain is there, and then the tokens that sit on top of it is there. We all invest in what we created called Ethereum, not as the founders, but this ecosystem that is feeding the ideas that we build on top of it, right? We all supported Bitcoin from For me, it was 2010 when I learned about that thing, and I went there, and you took your little HP 1100 computer, you tried to mine bitcoins on that, right? That was a possibility at one point, people. It may not be possible anymore, but that was a thing. And we invest our physical form of connectivity and resources to everything that we could, but it all comes from thoughts. And in the physical world, we look at, if you take it in if you take everything that happens in reverse, so your actions and behaviors were feelings that were previously thoughts in the mind that were ruminated on in your head, in your superconscious brain. And then your subconscious mind said, this is how we're going to create patterns to make these things into feelings, your emotions and all that. And then your actions are strictly formats of the behaviors that are attached to those thoughts. Those things never go away. Every human being will have that. Every other animal that's like us will have that. It may be expressed in different ways, but the physical form has to go. And the older I get, the more I'm trying to appreciate that. The problem I think that human beings have is we have a continuous desire, appetite for continuously living on in the physical format. It doesn't matter how large or small your contribution is. This is where IQ can't help you. You could be the smartest person in the room, you want to do more. You could be the dumbest person in the room, and all you want to do is wipe your ass. You want to do that, right? It's a thing for us as a species. You want to continue doing, and I think doing feels very painful for us as a thought, because if the physical representation is not there, we don't feel like we're actually doing anything anymore.
Yeah, it's important to set goals and meet those goals, because then ultimately it will lead you to death, which is the ultimate goal, right? Is where you felt like you accomplished all that you needed to in a life, and then
it's funny you say that. It's funny you say, look, accomplishing death, because people find that really painful. Like, imagine death as an accomplishment after everything you do. It's not going to be a house, not a car, not more kids. You die. As, like, really think about it as the greatest reward for any and everything you could do or not do. That's some serious code.
Well, it's because, like, in my opinion, death is life fully manifest. You have not fully lived until you have died, because you have only experienced part of experience.
Yeah.
And
the cycle of energy.
Exactly. Sure. Exactly. We have expanded, but death is like the retraction or the collapse.
Yeah, but I actually see death as like just sometimes it's a reset, sometimes it's a refurbishing, sometimes it's a rebuilding. Because I remember that when I was a kid, I was about 7 years old when my brain started making sense of what something dead looks like. I was walking home from school one day, and I saw a dog that its body was decaying. You could see the maggots and everything eating away at this corpse. And in 2-3 days, this entire thing that looked like the physical form of a dog was eaten down to nothing. All the moisture and the juices and everything of it went right into the soil. That very same spot right now, there's a tree that grew there. It's a mango tree.
Wow.
The soil for me is I need to get back on my coding because I don't remember the terminology I want to use. But the soil for me is the environment, the culture medium that says, so from here you came, so shall you return. And you get to redo this process. I think that's why we fell in love with, storing everything on the ground and burying our dead on the ground. Why? Because it became a necessary thing to go back to the soil. And I think we've been given the perfect culture medium. For me, the soil would be like the internet, and where you may be able to do certain things, maybe a different format of a blockchain, depending on how you treat the soil. And then you can build all these other assets on top of them. But it's repeatable, it's replenishable. You can keep doing these things over and over until you find the right formula for the right scenarios. But you have to trade the physical body back in one day. And I just think, for me, the older I get, I just think the more we can make peace with that, life becomes 50-60% easier for people, because now it reminds you of how narrow of a window you have to actually be contributing to yourself, your family, your friends, your environments, and all that stuff. Like if you were sure that you only had 100 years to do this, I guarantee you most people 20s, 30s, and 40s would be spend far different the way we do it now.
Hmm.
I agree because we feel like, oh, there's always tomorrow,
Yeah,
but I could die on this stream.
yeah,
We could, as soon as the stream goes off, we have no guarantee of any other moment than now, 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 and forever. That's
yeah,
all we're guaranteed. And one thing I think about death is, so on a scientific and physical level, when I die, my body dies. I'll be buried in the ground. I'll be burned to ashes. I'll be whatever happens. And then I'll be reintegrated into the system, right?
yeah,
Worms will eat me. Birds will eat the worms. Bigger birds will eat smaller birds and so on. I'll become part of the system again.
yeah,
So, but the part that is unseen, that you can't put in a jar, the
yeah,
thing that makes me relate to my environment on a, call it spiritual, non-physical level, whatever the terminology is,
yeah,
what does that reintegration look like? Where does that part of me go? Does it, like, one crazy theory I have, I know some of my theories are crazy, and that's fine. Call me cuckoo banana pants. It is what it is. But it's like, I wonder if there is, like, if energy can never be created or destroyed, then I wonder if there is a life force or a certain amount of life force, right? Like, we see as more deforestation, more animals going extinct than ever before, and yet we have more human beings on the planet than ever before. So I wonder if there's a correlation there. Like, if there's only a certain amount of life force that can be given to biotic things. And so it's like, where does my life force go? Do I become another human? Do I become part human, part bird, part worm, part grass blade? Like, where do I go? Me, KG, where does he go?
I think you could actually become 2 humans, maybe 3,
Sure, I completely agree with that.
at the same time.
Yeah, I agree. Like, if you and me were to die at the same exact moment, then who knows? Maybe we could go and we could create a new person, and then, like, the foot of an eagle. I have no idea.
Let's
But
let's dream bigger. How about we create a new planet?
but you see,
Why not?
that's a funny thing. I think we're all again a part of all of that because whatever that there's a part of the system design that says you can be any species, any type of thing, any category of thing. When you die, what does everything goes back to? In the physical form, we can call it soil or the ground or whatever. But in the only other form that we could connect spiritually to anything, it's an energy form, right? And it flows. It's a never-ending flow that it just constantly changes. I think if you watch, sometimes you watch these experiments, or let's use the thing that we consider a culture medium for us, blood. If you take blood and you put it in the right environment under the right circumstances, you can use it to create muscle tissue, bone tissue, cartilage, veins, arteries, all these things. It's just changing small bits of detail. And then you can create the wrong type of muscle, the right type. You can create what we call deformities on purpose, making it have certain defects that would be bad for humans, but better for other animals, right? And if we're able to do that with just our DNA, imagine the universal flow having the DNA of everything else and decides how that cycle works. I think that's what we all try to tap into with our brains, right? Because you can essentially be anything all the time. Right now, in a physical form, our consciousness is described in this physical form as a human being. But once that physical form dies, that energy can become anything else it wants to be. I look forward to a day when I'm a palm tree swaying in the wind and I don't have to be afraid of the sun. Because imagine standing like a palm tree as a human being all day long with this little hair on us. It would be a terrible experience just for 5 days. It would be a terrible experience. And then those trees are out there swaying. And then one day you become a marijuana plant and some dude will smoke some of your bush, right? And I'm very serious about this. These are experiences that we tap into every day. Like I said it to this Rastafarian guy once. what is it like for you smoking marijuana? He said, I get to be the plant today. I get to feel the essence of the plant in my physical form as a human. And the plant gets to feel what it feels like being a human for the day, just by me taking a bud and rolling it into this thing called paper. And it's an entire experience that we get to share from time to time. Sorry about that, guys. From time to time, we're just having simple experiences. I think we're a part of everything, and death is the most beautiful part of living. And unfortunately, sometimes when I say that to people, they think that I mean, well, I'm looking forward to dying tomorrow. No, I'm not. I'm not looking forward to dying per se. I'm looking forward to the process of death doing what it does well, because I am absolutely ignorant of all the facts of death, but it is going to happen.
Life's only guarantee.
Yes. It's an interesting conversation over here with you guys. Wish I could do this more often.
I may very well spark this up, speaking of marijuana, this conversation on a more regular basis. I think that, everybody who's spoken here tonight, it's been incredible. And like, if you guys have any more to say, I'm not going to stop you, but
we should do weekly Sunday special.
I'm 100% open to that. And we could even do, obviously once you get into the rabbit hole, we're obviously going to rehash these conversations over and over again. But, maybe if you guys are open to that, I would love to. I mean, these types of conversations are my favorite to have. I don't get to have them very often.
I need more conversations like this inside this blockchain space.
I think a lot of people do. I think it's important that these things are discussed, and I find this meeting tonight to be a very important and monumental shift in a new direction for a lot of the big thinkers in the space. And I appreciate being able to share this time together, and I think that it is a trampoline by which we will launch ourselves into the future with. So I appreciate everything you guys brought to the table. I thought the conversation was visceral and real and abstract, and ultimately I think there was a lot of good things that we brought up, and I think it's just the beginning of tilling the ground for 100,000 palm trees to grow. So thank you.
Amazing.
Well said, gentlemen. All right. Well, look, we're getting a lot of requests to do weekly. So look, I will do my best. I'm a father and a husband myself, and a full-time business owner. So I will do my best to commit to this as frequently as possible. And that is all I can promise, is that I will do my best. But on that note, I'm going to say a few closing thoughts, but is there anything that any of you three want to say before I pull you down?
I'll just go quickly. I see some people in the comment section here, because I just got a chance to figure out how to access it for the first time on the stream. So there's some guys there like Hexagon Chief, NZ, who said he wanted to be on here with us. If whatever this becomes, when it becomes that, that should be something that's possible. And it's nice to see you around the spaces. I see Claire also. Claire's in the chat. How you doing? And a few of the other people here. Just thank you guys for tuning in and jumping in and contributing with comments. And see y'all soon.
Thank you, Ghaffar.
You're welcome.
Jack, Axis, you all good?
Yeah. Thank you for making it happen. It was amazing.
Thank you for being here. All right,
everybody
guys.
in the chat, please spread this stream far and wide. I think a lot of people need to hear this conversation. I really do. Thank you very much for sharing the night with us. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Awesome.
And everybody's Twitters are in the description. Like they said, like it, share it, clip it. All right, gentlemen, thank you for being here. If you want to hang out in the green room, that's cool. If not, I'll see you soon.
See you soon.
All right, man. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Wow. That was an incredible stream. And we went on for 2 hours and 20 minutes, and we easily, if our physical forms didn't get exhausted and our brains didn't turn to mush, we could have easily gone for 2 hours and 20 minutes more. This discussion is endless, boundless, formless. There is no right answer. There is no wrong answer. There may be right, there may be wrong. But the point is, to my understanding and my interpretation, that nobody knows. People claim to know. They may be right. They may be wrong. It's all abstract. It's all uncertainty. But there are a few certainties in this life. Death being one of them. At any moment, your time can come to an end. That could be this moment. That could be the next moment. It could be tomorrow. It could be 10 years from now. But what we do know is that it will end. So what I am taking from this stream, from talking to these incredible minds, these incredible gentlemen, is to make the best of every moment, to listen to yourself, to listen to that thing that you know to be true, regardless of what anyone else thinks about you, because nobody else is living your reality. Only you are living your reality. Only you get to reap the rewards of your reality. Only you have to pay the consequences of your reality. So spend some time with yourself. Solitude isn't a bad thing. Cicero says, I am never less alone than when I am alone. Spend some time alone. Solitude is a beautiful thing. Listen to what you have to say to yourself. No judgment to yourself. Just be yourself, whatever that means. And if you can see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. I appreciate every single person who joined us this evening. And I hope that you took something from this. Until next time, peace.